I never thought I'd be grateful for my obsessive-compulsive habit of bringing Elena lunch when she worked late. 23 years of marriage had taught me that small gestures keep relationships alive, or so I believed until that Tuesday afternoon when my world imploded like a controlled demolition. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Jack Turner, and I own a small auto repair shop on the south side of town. Nothing fancy, just honest work that keeps food on the table and pays the mortgage on our modest 2-story house. Elena always said I was too simple for her ambitions, but I figured that's what made us work. She dreamed big. I kept us grounded. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was driving my pristine 2019 Ford pickup, the one luxury I allowed myself, to surprise my wife with her favorite Thai food from that place on 5th Street. Elena had been working late at Morrison & Associates for months, ever since her promotion to senior HR director. The pay raise was nice, but I missed having dinner together. Morrison & Associates occupied the top 3 floors of the sleekest building downtown, glass and steel reaching toward the sky like Elena's ambitions. I'd only been there twice before, both times for company Christmas parties where I felt like a grease monkey among peacocks. The elevator ride to the 15th floor gave me time to rehearse my surprise. "Hey, beautiful, thought you might be hungry." Simple, sweet, the kind of thing that used to make her smile before she started caring more about thread counts and wine varietals. The receptionist's desk was empty at 7:30 p.m. Most of the office was dark, except for the executive wing where Elena's new corner office was located. My work boots squeaked against the polished marble floor as I made my way through the maze of cubicles and glass-walled conference rooms. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Elena's laugh, but different somehow. Breathier, more intimate than I'd heard in months. The door to her office was slightly ajar, and what I saw through that crack changed everything. Elena was sitting on her boss's lap, Gregory Dalton's hands tangled in her hair as she whispered something that made him chuckle. They weren't just talking. Her skirt was hiked up, his shirt was unbuttoned, and they were moving together in a rhythm that made my stomach drop to my boots. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, Thai food growing cold in my hands, watching my wife of 23 years grinding against another man in the office I helped pay for with my tax dollars and her salary. The salary from the job she got after sleeping with her boss. Elena saw me first. Her face went white, then red, then something close to defiant. Gregory turned around, and instead of shame or embarrassment, I saw smugness. This bastard was proud of himself. "Jack," Elena stammered, climbing off Gregory's lap and smoothing her skirt. "I can explain." "Can you?" I set the Thai food on her desk, right next to a framed photo of us from our last anniversary. Because it looks pretty self-explanatory from where I'm standing. Gregory stood up, buttoning his shirt with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never faced consequences. "Jack, right? Elena's told me so much about you." I looked at this guy, 6'2", silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of man Elena used to make fun of when we were young. Now she was screwing him in her office while I brought her dinner like a devoted husband. "All good things, I hope," I said, extending my hand to Gregory. He shook it, confused by my calm demeanor. "You can have her, man. I'll go pack her things." Elena's mouth dropped open. "Jack, wait." "Nope." I turned toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Elena, that Thai food is from the place you said reminded you of our honeymoon. Seemed appropriate." I walked out of that office building with my dignity intact and my marriage in ruins. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a new version of hell, one where I was the fool who'd been blind to his wife's betrayal for God knows how long. The drive home was a blur of rage, hurt, and a strange sense of relief. At least now I knew why Elena had been so distant, why she'd started working out, buying new clothes, staying late at the office. The signs were all there. I'd just been too trusting to see them. Our house looked different when I pulled into the driveway. Same white colonial with blue shutters, same rose bushes Elena planted 3 years ago, same life I thought we were building together, but now it felt like a museum of my own stupidity. I was sitting in my recliner, drinking a beer and staring at the wall when Elena came home 2 hours later. She walked in like she owned the place, which technically she did, half of it anyway. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" I took another sip of beer. "Because I think that scene in your office covered the highlights." Elena sat on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap, like she was about to deliver a presentation. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're sleeping with your boss. Probably have been for months, maybe longer." She didn't deny it, which told me everything I needed to know. "Jack, our marriage has been dead for years. We both know it." "I didn't know it, but thanks for the update." "Don't be sarcastic. This is serious." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Serious? Elena, I just caught you riding another man like a mechanical bull, and you want to lecture me about being serious?" Her face flushed red. "You're disgusting." "I'm disgusting? I'm not the one who was playing hide the salami in a corner office while my spouse brought me dinner." Elena stood up, smoothing her skirt again. It seemed to be a nervous habit now. "I want a divorce." "Congratulations, you can have one." She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "Just like that?" "Just like that. I'll call a lawyer tomorrow. You can move in with Gregory, or get your own place, or move to Mars for all I care. But you're not staying here." "This is my house too." "Was your house. Past tense. You gave up your claim when you decided to audition for Gregory's personal secretary." Elena's composure finally cracked. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Gregory and I have a connection you could never understand. He appreciates my intelligence, my ambition, your flexibility." She slapped me, hard. The sound echoed through our living room like a gunshot. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting, and smiled. There's the real Elena. I was wondering when she'd show up. "I'm taking half of everything, Jack. The house, your business, your retirement, all of it. Good luck with that. I'll make sure my lawyer knows about your creative performance reviews with Gregory. Adultery still matters in divorce court, even in this day and age." Elena's face went pale again. "You wouldn't. Try me." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'll be back tomorrow for my things." "Take your time. I'll be at the shop." After she left, I sat in that recliner for another 2 hours, finishing my beer and planning my next move. Elena thought she'd won something by trading up to Gregory Dalton. She had no idea that she'd just declared war on the wrong man. I might be a simple mechanic, but I'd learned a few things in 45 years of life. The most important lesson? Never underestimate the guy with nothing left to lose. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Pete Morrison. No relation to Elena's company, just one of those cosmic jokes life likes to play. Pete and I went to high school together, and he'd handled the paperwork when I bought the shop 15 years ago. "Adultery, huh?" Pete leaned back in his chair, making notes on a yellow legal pad. "That changes things, especially if she's been sleeping with her boss. Could be a conflict of interest, abuse of power, all sorts of complications for their company." "What do I need to prove it?" "Photos, texts, emails, witnesses. The more evidence, the better your position in the settlement." I thought about what I'd seen in Elena's office. I walked in on them. Does that count? It's a start. But you'll need more. Judges like documentation. After leaving Pete's office, I drove to Mickey's bar, a dive on the west side where I'd been drinking with the same group of guys every Friday night for the past decade. Mickey Kowalski owned the place, a former Marine who'd been my best friend since we met in community college 25 years ago. "Jesus, Jack." Mickey said after I told him the story. Elena? Really? Really. Caught them in the act. Mickey poured me a whiskey, even though it was only 11 in the morning. What do you need? Information. This Gregory Dalton guy. I need to know what kind of man I'm dealing with. Leave it to me. I know people who know people. That's the thing about Mickey. 20 years of running a bar in a blue-collar neighborhood teaches you how to find out anything about anybody. People talk when they drink, and Mickey remembered everything. I spent the rest of the day at the shop, trying to focus on work while my phone buzzed with texts from Elena. She wanted to come by the house to get her clothes. She wanted to discuss things rationally. She wanted me to understand her position. I ignored every message. Around 6 p.m., Derek Williams, one of my mechanics, knocked on my office door. Derek was 28, smart as hell, and had a degree in computer science before he decided he liked working with his hands better than staring at screens all day. Boss, you okay? You've been staring at that same invoice for 2 hours. I told Derek the story. He listened without interrupting, nodding at all the right places. Man, that's rough. What are you going to do? Fight back, but I need help. You still know your way around computers? Derek grinned. Is that even a question? Elena's been sloppy about digital security, never changes her passwords, uses the same one for everything. Think you could take a look at her social media, email, maybe her phone records? Probably. But Jack, that's illegal? Yeah, I know. But she's trying to take half my business, Derek. The business that pays your salary and supports 3 other families. Sometimes illegal is the only way to get to the truth. Derek thought about it for a minute. What's her password? Our anniversary date. She uses it for everything. That evening, I sat in my kitchen while Derek worked on his laptop at my dining room table. Within an hour, he'd accessed Elena's Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, and phone records. Holy shit, Jack. You need to see this. Elena's digital life was a roadmap of betrayal. Text messages with Gregory going back 8 months. Photos from business trips that looked more like romantic getaways. Hotel receipts charged to company credit cards. And worse, messages with her sister Linda and best friend Sophie, laughing about how clueless I was. Look at this one, Derek said, pointing to a text thread from 3 weeks ago. Elena. Jack brought me flowers yesterday, so pathetic. Sophie. When are you going to tell him about Gregory? Elena. After the promotion is official, let him think he's married to a successful woman for a few more weeks. Linda. You're evil. I love it. I stared at those messages until the words blurred. 23 years of marriage, reduced to a joke between my wife and the people I'd considered family. There's more, Derek said quietly. She's been moving money. Small amounts, but consistent. Looks like she's been building a separate savings account for months. How much? About $15,000 so far. All from your joint checking account. The rage I'd been holding back since yesterday finally broke free. I stood up so fast my chair fell over, and for a moment I wanted to put my fist through the wall. Instead, I walked to the window and stared out at Elena's rose bushes. Print everything, I said. Every message, every receipt, every bank transfer. I want documentation of all of it. Derek worked until midnight, creating a folder full of evidence that painted Elena as calculating, cruel, and completely unfaithful. When he finally left, I sat alone in my kitchen, reading through my wife's private thoughts about our marriage. The woman I'd loved for more than half my adult life thought I was pathetic. She'd been planning to leave me for months, stealing money from our joint account to fund her new life with Gregory. Every kiss, every "I love you," every moment of intimacy had been a lie. I poured myself another whiskey and started planning my counterattack. Elena wanted a divorce? Fine. But she wasn't going to walk away with half of everything I'd worked for while laughing about what a fool I'd been. She'd chosen to play this game, and now she was going to learn that even simple mechanics can be dangerous when they're pushed too far. My phone buzzed with another text from Elena. "Jack, please call me. We can work this out." I deleted the message and smiled. Work it out? Oh, we were going to work it out, all right. Just not the way she expected. Thursday morning brought the first real surprise of this whole mess. Linda Hartman, Elena's younger sister, showed up at my shop just after I opened. Linda was everything Elena used to be before ambition poisoned her. Warm, genuine, and down to earth. She worked as a nurse at the county hospital and had always treated me like the brother she never had. "Jack, I heard about what happened," she said, standing awkwardly by my office door. "I'm so sorry." "Thanks, Linda. That means a lot." She sat down across from my desk, wringing her hands. "I need to tell you something. About Elena and Gregory." "I'm listening." "It's been going on longer than you think. Since last Christmas. Maybe before that." Linda's voice was barely above a whisper. "She brought him to Mom's birthday party in March, introduced him as her boss. But the way they looked at each other, I knew." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I'm a coward. Because Elena's my sister. Because I hoped it would end on its own." Tears started rolling down Linda's cheeks. "But it got worse. She started talking about you like you were some kind of burden, making jokes about your job, your clothes, the way you eat cereal for dinner sometimes." That last detail hit me hard. Elena used to think it was cute that I'd eat Lucky Charms at 8 p.m. while watching baseball. Now it was ammunition for her cruel jokes. "There's something else," Linda continued. "Gregory's married. Has been for 15 years. His wife doesn't know about Elena." "What's his wife's name?" "Catherine. Catherine Dalton. She volunteers at the animal shelter downtown." I filed that information away for later use. "Why are you telling me this now?" Linda wiped her eyes with a tissue. "Because what Elena's doing is wrong. You're a good man, Jack. You deserve better than this." "Thank you. That means more than you know." After Linda left, I called Mickey. "I need you to find out everything you can about Catherine Dalton, Gregory's wife." "On it. Also, I've got some interesting information about your boy Gregory. Want to meet for lunch?" We met at Sal's Deli, a hole-in-the-wall place where the pastrami was legendary and the booths were private. Mickey slid a manila folder across the table. "Gregory Dalton, age 47, CEO of Morrison & Associates for 8 years. Married to Catherine, 2 kids in college, clean criminal record, but here's where it gets interesting." Mickey opened the folder. This isn't his first workplace romance? The folder contained printouts of newspaper articles, court documents, and what looked like private investigator reports. Mickey's information network was more extensive than I'd realized. 3 years ago, Gregory had an affair with his previous assistant, Jennifer Walsh. When she threatened to file a sexual harassment lawsuit, the company paid her $200,000 to go away quietly. "How do you know this?" "Jennifer's brother Tony drinks at my bar, told me the whole story last night after I bought him a few rounds and mentioned Gregory's name. I studied the documents. What happened to Jennifer?" "She moved to California, started her own business. But here's the kicker. She kept copies of everything. Emails, text messages, recorded phone calls. Tony says she's got enough dirt on Gregory to bury him." "Is she willing to talk?" "For the right price, yeah. Tony gave me her number." That afternoon, I called Jennifer Walsh from the privacy of my office. She answered on the second ring, and when I explained who I was and why I was calling, her voice turned ice cold. "Gregory Dalton is a predator," she said. "He targets women who work for him, promises them promotions, then discards them when he gets bored. Your wife isn't his first victim, and she won't be his last. Will you help me expose him?" "What do you have in mind?" I outlined my plan. Jennifer listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I'll do it," she said finally. "Not for you, but for every woman he's going to hurt in the future. Gregory Dalton needs to face consequences for once in his privileged life. That evening, Elena came to the house to collect her clothes. I watched from the kitchen window as she loaded suitcases into her BMW, the car I'd helped her buy 2 years ago when she got her first promotion at Morrison & Associates. She knocked on the back door instead of using her key, which I took as a small victory. "I need to get some things from upstairs," she said when I opened the door. "Go ahead, I'll wait down here." Elena moved through our house like a stranger, taking only what she needed for her new life with Gregory. I could hear her in our bedroom, opening drawers and closets, erasing 23 years of shared history, one item at a time. When she came back downstairs, she was carrying a box of photo albums. "I'm taking these," she said, as if asking permission. "Those are our memories, Elena. Our wedding, our vacations, our life together." "Were our memories. Past tense." She used the same tone I'd used on her 2 days ago. "I'm starting fresh. With Gregory." "With Gregory," she confirmed. "He makes me feel alive again, Jack. When's the last time you made me feel anything besides bored?" I could have listed a dozen recent examples. Surprise dinners, weekend getaways, small gestures of love and affection. But what was the point? Elena had rewritten our history to justify her betrayal. "I hope he's worth it," I said. "He is. Gregory sees my potential. He believes in me." "He's married, Elena." She froze, halfway to the door. "What did you say?" "Gregory Dalton, married 15 years, wife named Catherine, 2 kids in college. Did he forget to mention that during your romantic business trips?" Elena's face went white, then red, then something close to panic. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Catherine volunteers at the animal shelter downtown, drives a silver Lexus, lives in that big house on Maple Street with the circular driveway." Elena dropped the box of photo albums. Pictures of our wedding scattered across the kitchen floor. "How do you know that?" "Because unlike you, I do my research before I blow up my life for someone." Elena knelt to gather the scattered photos, her hands shaking. "It doesn't matter. He's going to leave her." "Is he? Because according to my sources, you're not his first workplace romance. Just his latest. You don't know what you're talking about." "Jennifer Walsh. Ring a bell?" Elena went completely still. "How do you know that name?" "Because Jennifer and I had a very interesting conversation this afternoon. Turns out Gregory has a pattern. Seduce the employee, promise them the world, then pay them off when things get complicated." Elena stood up, clutching the photo albums to her chest. "You're trying to manipulate me. I'm trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. But if you want to be Gregory's next victim, that's your choice." She walked toward the door, then stopped. "Even if you're right about Gregory, I'm still leaving you. This marriage is over, Jack." "I know, but at least now you know who you're leaving me for." After Elena left, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the scattered remnants of our wedding photos. In every picture, we looked happy, young, hopeful, in love. I wondered when that couple had died and why I'd been the only one who hadn't attended the funeral. My phone rang. Mickey. "Jennifer's flying in tomorrow," he said. "She wants to meet with you before we put the plan in motion." "Good. It's time Gregory Dalton learned what happens when you mess with the wrong man's wife." "You sure about this, Jack? Once we start, there's no going back." I looked at a picture of Elena and me from our honeymoon, both of us laughing at some joke I couldn't remember. "There's already no going back, Mickey. Elena made sure of that." Jennifer Walsh arrived on Friday afternoon, and she was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of a bitter victim, I met a confident businesswoman who'd turned her experience with Gregory into motivation for success. She was tall, auburn-haired, and carried herself with the poise of someone who'd survived a war and come out stronger. We met at Mickey's bar during the slow afternoon hours, when the only customers were a couple of retirees nursing beers and watching sports highlights on the ancient television above the bar. So you're the husband, Jennifer said, settling into the booth across from me. Gregory mentioned you a few times during our relationship. Nothing good, I'm guessing. He called you a simple man with simple dreams, said Elena deserved better than a mechanic who'd never amount to anything. I felt my jaw clench. Sounds like Gregory. Jennifer opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. 3 years ago, I was where your wife is now, convinced that Gregory was my ticket to a better life, that he saw something special in me that no one else did. What changed your mind? I found out about Catherine, and about the woman before me, and the one before her. Jennifer's voice was steady, but I could see the old anger in her eyes. Gregory Dalton is a collector, Mr. Turner. He collects beautiful things, plays with them until he gets bored, then moves on to the next shiny object. She opened the folder and spread documents across the table. These are copies of every email, text message, and recorded conversation I had with Gregory during our 6-month affair, including the ones where he promised to leave his wife, and the ones where he threatened to fire me if I didn't keep quiet about our relationship. I studied the documents. They painted a picture of manipulation and psychological abuse that made my stomach turn. Why didn't you use these 3 years ago? Because I was scared, humiliated, and broke. Gregory's lawyers offered me $200,000 to disappear quietly, and I needed the money to start over. Jennifer leaned forward, but I kept everything, just in case. And now? Now I own a successful consulting firm in San Francisco. I'm engaged to a wonderful man who treats me like an equal, and I have nothing left to lose. She smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Gregory Dalton ruined a year of my life. I'd like to return the favor. Mickey brought us coffee and sat down at the table. Tell him about the plan. Jennifer pulled out her phone. I've been in contact with 2 other women who had affairs with Gregory. Sarah Chen, who worked for him 5 years ago, and Rebecca Martinez, who left the company last year. Both of them are willing to go public with their stories. 3 women, all with documented evidence of Gregory's pattern of behavior, Mickey added. That's not a coincidence anymore. That's a federal case. What kind of case? Jennifer smiled again. Sexual harassment, abuse of power, creating a hostile work environment, misuse of company funds for personal relationships. The list goes on. I leaned back in the booth, processing this information. What do you need from me? Elena's cooperation. She's Gregory's current victim, which makes her the key to everything. If she's willing to testify about their relationship, about the promises he made and the pressure he applied, we can destroy him. Elena won't cooperate. She thinks she's in love with him. Love? Jennifer laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Mr. Turner, your wife isn't in love. She's being manipulated by an expert. Gregory knows exactly what to say, exactly how to make a woman feel special and chosen. So how do we open her eyes? Jennifer and Mickey exchanged glances. We show her the truth, Mickey said. All of it. The other women, the pattern, the fact that Gregory has no intention of leaving his wife. And if she still won't listen? Then we proceed without her, Jennifer said. But either way, Gregory Dalton's reign of terror ends now. That evening, I called Elena. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice guarded. What do you want, Jack? To meet with you, somewhere neutral. I have information you need to hear. If this is another attempt to manipulate me, it's not about us, Elena. It's about Gregory and the other women. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, what other women? Meet me tomorrow morning at Sal's Deli, 10 a.m. Come alone. I don't think that's a good idea. Elena, I'm trying to help you. For once in this whole mess, I'm not thinking about myself or our marriage or what you've done to me. I'm thinking about you and what Gregory is doing to you. Another long pause. 1 hour. That's all. That's all I need. Saturday morning, Elena arrived at Sal's Deli looking nervous and defensive. She'd lost weight in the past week, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "You look tired," I said as she sat down across from me. "I haven't been sleeping well." "Guilty conscience?" Elena's jaw tightened. "I didn't come here to be insulted, Jack." "You're right. I'm sorry." I slid Jennifer's folder across the table. "I came here to show you this." Elena opened the folder and began reading. I watched her face change as she processed the information. Confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like fear. "Where did you get these?" "From Jennifer Walsh. She wanted you to see what Gregory is really like." Elena's hands were shaking as she turned the pages. This can't be real." "It's real, Elena. Every email, every text message, every promise he made to Jennifer is documented in there, including the threats when she tried to end things. But he loves me. He said the same things to Jennifer, word for word in some cases." I pointed to a specific email. "Read that one out loud." Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "You're not like the other women I've known. You understand me in ways my wife never could. You're my future, Jennifer. My everything." Sound familiar? Elena closed the folder and pushed it away. "This doesn't prove anything. People can change." "Can they? Because according to Jennifer, there are at least 2 other women with similar stories. Sarah Chen and Rebecca Martinez. All of them employees, all of them promised promotions and a future with Gregory." Elena stood up abruptly. "I have to go." "Elena, wait. No. I won't listen to this anymore. You're jealous and desperate, and you'll say anything to get me back." She walked out of the deli, leaving Jennifer's folder on the table. I sat there for another 10 minutes, drinking coffee and wondering if I'd just made things worse. My phone buzzed with a text from Mickey. "How did it go?" I typed back. "She's not ready to hear the truth yet." Then we moved to Phase 2. Phase 2. I wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but I knew it would involve more pain for everyone involved. Elena had chosen to ignore the evidence, which meant she was going to have to learn about Gregory's true nature the hard way. I gathered up Jennifer's documents and headed home. There was still work to be done, and Gregory Dalton wasn't going to destroy himself. But he was going to be destroyed. I'd make sure of that. Sunday evening brought the showdown I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Elena called around 6 p.m., her voice tight with anger and something that sounded like panic. "We need to talk, tonight." "About what?" "About the lies you've been spreading, about Jennifer Walsh and your pathetic attempt to sabotage my relationship." "I haven't been spreading lies, Elena. I've been sharing facts. Meet me at the house in an hour. And Jack, come alone." I arrived at what used to be our home to find Elena's BMW in the driveway next to a black Mercedes I didn't recognize. Gregory's car, I assumed. So much for coming alone. Elena met me at the front door, her face flushed with anger. "You had no right to contact Jennifer Walsh." "I had every right to protect myself. And apparently, to try to protect you, though you seem determined to ignore good advice." "Good advice?" Elena's voice rose to a near shout. "You hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Gregory." "I didn't hire anyone. Jennifer contacted me after she heard about your affair. Seems Gregory's reputation precedes him." Elena stepped aside, and Gregory emerged from the living room. He looked less polished than he had in Elena's office. His hair was mussed, his shirt wrinkled, and there was something desperate in his eyes. "Jack, right?" Gregory extended his hand like we were meeting at a cocktail party. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I ignored his hand. "No misunderstanding. You're sleeping with my wife, and you've done the same thing to at least 3 other employees over the past 5 years." "That's not true." "Which part? The sleeping with my wife part? Or the pattern of sexual harassment part?" Gregory's composure slipped. "You don't know what you're talking about." Jennifer Walsh might disagree. So might Sarah Chen and Rebecca Martinez. Elena looked back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. Gregory, who are Sarah Chen and Rebecca Martinez? Former employees, Gregory said quickly. Disgruntled workers who left the company under unfortunate circumstances. Unfortunate circumstances, I repeated. Is that what we're calling sexual harassment these days? That's enough, Elena snapped. Gregory, tell him the truth. Tell him about us, about our plans. Gregory shifted uncomfortably. Elena, maybe we should discuss this privately. No, I want Jack to hear this from you. Elena grabbed Gregory's arm. Tell him how you're going to leave Catherine and marry me. The silence that followed was deafening. Gregory looked like a man who'd just realized he was standing in quicksand. Well? Elena prompted. It's complicated, Gregory said finally. Complicated how? Catherine and I, we have history, children, financial entanglements. Elena's grip on his arm tightened. You said you were going to file for divorce. I am, eventually, but these things take time. I almost felt sorry for Elena as I watched the truth dawn on her face. Almost. How much time? She asked. A year, maybe 2. A year? Elena's voice cracked. Gregory, I left my husband for you. I moved out of my home, destroyed my marriage. And I appreciate that sacrifice, Gregory said, but his words sounded hollow. But you have to understand my position. Your position? Elena released his arm and stepped back. What about my position? What about what you promised me? Gregory straightened his tie, a nervous gesture that reminded me of a politician preparing to lie. I never promised anything specific, Elena. We discussed possibilities, but… Possibilities? Elena's voice rose to a shriek. You said you loved me. You said I was your future. I do love you, but love doesn't solve practical problems. I'd seen enough. Practical problems like a wife who might take half your assets in a divorce? Gregory turned to me with undisguised hatred. Stay out of this. I'm already in this. You made sure of that when you decided to screw my wife in her office. That was a private moment. In a workplace you control, with an employee you supervise. Nothing private about it. That's textbook sexual harassment. Elena was staring at Gregory like she'd never seen him before. Is that what this is? Sexual harassment? Of course not, Gregory said quickly. Jack's trying to manipulate you, Elena. He's desperate to get you back. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. Because I'm not the one who's been lying about my intentions. Elena noticed the phone. Are you recording this? Every word, for my divorce lawyer. Gregory lunged for my phone, but I was ready for him. I stepped aside, and he stumbled into the coffee table, knocking over a lamp Elena had bought for our 10th anniversary. You bastard, Gregory snarled, regaining his balance. Careful, Gregory. Assault charges would look bad on your resume. Elena was staring at the broken lamp, and I could see something breaking in her eyes as well. Gregory, just answer one question. Are you going to divorce Catherine? Gregory looked at Elena, then at me, then back at Elena. Not immediately, no. Elena slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed through the living room just like when she'd slapped me 4 days ago. Get out, she whispered. Elena, let me explain. Get out! She grabbed the broken lamp and threw it at Gregory's head. He ducked, and it shattered against the wall. Gregory straightened his tie again and headed for the door. When you calm down, call me. We can discuss this rationally. Don't hold your breath, Elena said. After Gregory left, Elena and I stood in the wreckage of our living room, surrounded by the broken pieces of the life we'd built together. You were right, she said finally. About what? About Gregory. About everything. Elena sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. I'm such a fool. You're not a fool. You were manipulated by an expert. Elena looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Can you ever forgive me, Jack? I thought about that question for a long moment. Could I forgive 23 years of marriage being thrown away for a man who never intended to commit? Could I forgive the cruel jokes, the stolen money, the months of lies? I don't know, I said honestly, but it doesn't matter anymore. What do you mean? I mean, we're still getting divorced, Elena. Gregory didn't destroy our marriage. You did. Elena's face crumpled. But if Gregory was manipulating me, then you let him. You chose to believe his lies because they were more appealing than the truth of our marriage. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, you've been planning to leave me for months, moving money, making jokes about me with your friends, treating me like an embarrassment. Gregory didn't make you do those things. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So what happens now? Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without Gregory's promises, and I do the same thing without you. I headed toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Elena, you might want to start looking for a new job. Because when Jennifer Walsh and the other women go public with their stories, Morrison and Associates is going to need a scapegoat. Guess who that's going to be? Elena's face went white. They can't fire me. I haven't done anything wrong. Haven't you? You've been having an affair with the CEO, taking company-funded trips for personal reasons, using your position to facilitate a sexual relationship with your boss. That's enough to get you blacklisted from every HR job in the city. I left Elena sitting in our destroyed living room, surrounded by the consequences of her choices. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Peace. The war was over. Elena had lost Gregory, her job prospects, and her marriage. Gregory had lost his credibility and was about to lose much more. But I'd won something more valuable than revenge. I'd won my self-respect back. Tomorrow, Jennifer Walsh would begin her campaign to destroy Gregory Dalton's career. Elena would start learning what it meant to face consequences for her actions, and I would begin the process of building a new life from the ashes of the old one. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I walked into Elena's office with Thai food a week ago, but it was the ending I deserved. Monday morning brought the reckoning Gregory Dalton had been avoiding for years. Jennifer Walsh, accompanied by Sarah Chen and Rebecca Martinez, walked into the offices of Morrison and Associates at exactly 9 a.m., carrying briefcases full of documentation and a lawyer who specialized in sexual harassment cases. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand, but Derek had a contact in the building's security office who owed him a favor. The security footage would make for interesting viewing later. I was at my shop trying to focus on work when Elena called at 10:30. "They're here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who's where?" "The women, Jennifer Walsh and 2 others. They're in the conference room with Gregory and the board of directors." "How do you know?" "Because I can see the conference room from my office. Gregory looks like he's going to be sick." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. "What are they doing?" "Talking, showing documents. One of the board members just put his head in his hands." Elena paused. "Jack, what's going to happen to me?" "I don't know. What do you think should happen to you?" "I didn't know about the other women. I thought Gregory and I were special, unique." "Elena, you knew he was married. You knew what you were doing was wrong. The fact that you weren't his first victim doesn't make you innocent." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "They're going to fire me, aren't they?" "Probably, along with Gregory." "What am I going to do?" For the first time since this whole mess started, Elena sounded genuinely scared. Not angry, not defiant, not manipulative, just scared. "You're going to figure it out," I said, "like the rest of us do when our lives fall apart." I hung up and went back to work, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes I found myself wondering what was happening in that conference room, whether Gregory was trying to lie his way out of trouble, whether Elena was being questioned about her role in the affair. At noon, Mickey called with an update. "It's over," he said. Gregory's been terminated, effective immediately. Security escorted him out of the building 20 minutes ago. What about Elena? Still employed for now, but I hear she's been suspended pending an internal investigation. And the other women? Jennifer's talking to reporters as we speak. This story's going to be front-page news by tomorrow morning. That afternoon, I drove to Morrison & Associates and waited in the parking garage. Elena's BMW was still in its reserved spot, but I had a feeling she wouldn't be using it much longer. At 5:15, Elena emerged from the elevator looking like she'd aged 10 years in one day. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she walked like someone who'd just received devastating news. She saw me leaning against my truck and stopped. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for you. Thought you might need a ride." Elena looked confused. "Why would I need a ride?" "Because they took your company car keys, didn't they?" Elena's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the young woman I'd married 23 years ago. "How did you know?" "Because that's what companies do when they suspend employees under investigation for sexual misconduct." Elena walked over to my truck and leaned against the passenger door. "I'm ruined, Jack. Completely ruined. Maybe this is your chance to start over." "Start over? I'm 41 years old, unemployed, and about to be the subject of a sexual harassment scandal. Who's going to hire me?" "Someone who believes in second chances." Elena looked at me with something that might have been hope. "Do you believe in second chances?" I thought about that question for a long moment. Did I believe Elena deserved another chance? Did I believe our marriage could survive this betrayal? Did I believe people could really change? "I believe in consequences," I said finally. "And I believe you're just starting to face yours." Elena's face hardened. "So you're here to gloat?" "I'm here because despite everything you've done, I don't want to see you destroyed." "But you don't want me back?" "No, I don't." Elena nodded, accepting the finality in my voice. "Can you give me a ride home? To Linda's house, I mean. I'm staying with her until I figure out what to do next." "Get in." The drive to Linda's house was quiet, except for the low throb of Tom Petty singing "Learning to Fly" through the truck's old speakers. Elena sat with her forehead almost touching the passenger window, watching the city slide past like a movie she no longer recognized. Streetlights painted gold bars across her face, then darkness again. 8 months ago, she had arrived here full of ambition and perfume samples and the certainty that the world was waiting to love her. Now she was leaving with one suitcase and a reputation in ruins. I turned onto Linda's street, maple-lined, porch lights glowing, the kind of neighborhood that still put pumpkins on the steps in November. The truck rolled to a stop in the driveway. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Elena spoke first, voice small. "Jack, I want you to know something. I killed the engine. I'm listening. I really did love you." She kept her eyes on the windshield. "Maybe not the way you deserved, maybe not enough to stop me from doing the worst thing I've ever done. But it was real. Somewhere in the mess, it was real." I let the silence settle. Crickets, a dog barking 2 streets over, the faint tick of the engine cooling. "I know," I finally said. She turned then, mascara smudged but dry. "Do you think, someday, we could be friends?" The question hung between us like a soap bubble, beautiful, fragile, and doomed the second it touched reality. I pictured Sunday dinners, birthday cards, running into her at the grocery store with whoever came next. I pictured the way my stomach still twisted when I remembered walking into her office with takeout and finding Gregory's hand up her skirt. "Maybe," I said. "Someday, after the bleeding stops." Her mouth trembled, half smile, half grimace. "Fair enough." She opened the door. The dome light came on, harsh and unflattering. She paused on the running board. "For what it's worth, Jack, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I know you are. She nodded once, slid out, and pulled her suitcase from the back seat. The wheels rattled across the brick walkway like tiny gunshots. Halfway to the porch, she turned, raised one hand in a small wave that looked more like surrender than goodbye. Then the front door opened, Linda's silhouette appeared, and Elena disappeared inside. I sat there until the porch light went off. Then I drove home. The house greeted me with its familiar creaks and silences, but they didn't feel hostile anymore. They felt like breathing room. I dropped my keys in the bowl, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and stood in the kitchen, letting the cold bottle sweat against my palm. My phone rang. Jennifer Walsh. "Gregory's finished," she said without preamble. "Emergency board meeting this afternoon. Terminated for cause, effective immediately. No severance, no golden parachute, no non-disparagement clause. They escorted him out with a cardboard box and a security guard." I leaned against the counter. "How'd he take it?" "Badly. Screamed that it was a coup, that he'd built the company, that they'd all be sorry. Tried to take the nameplate off his door and the guard physically stopped him. It's already on TikTok." I laughed before I could stop myself. Jesus. "There's more. Linda filed at 4:30. She's asking for the house, the cars, the Aspen condo, the yacht, and 70% of whatever's left after the clawback provisions kick in. Her attorney attached the termination letter as Exhibit A. She's not playing. And Elena? HR called her in at 3. Paid administrative leave pending investigation. Translation: they're waiting for the PR dust to settle before they cut her loose with a neutrality agreement and a modest severance. She'll be gone by Friday." I took a long pull from the bottle. "You okay with all this?" Jennifer was quiet long enough I thought the call dropped. "Satisfied isn't the right word," she said finally. "Vindicated, maybe. 3 years ago I was 25 and terrified, and he told me no one would believe me. Today the entire world believes me. So yeah, I'm okay. Good doesn't feel like the right word either, but it's close." After we hung up, I carried the beer out to the back porch and sat in the dark. The stars were sharp tonight, the kind of cold November sky that makes you feel small in the best way. I thought about the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge would have been leaking the video myself, watching Gregory beg on camera, humiliating Elena in public. Justice was simply refusing to help him bury the truth. One requires hate that eats you alive. The other just requires courage. The phone buzzed against the porch rail. Unknown number. "This isn't over, Turner. You've destroyed my life, and I'm going to destroy yours." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then I smiled, slow and tired, and absolutely unafraid. Let him try. He'd already taken the worst thing he could take. My marriage, my trust, the version of my future I used to carry around in my head. Everything else, the house, the shop, the savings account, was just stuff, and stuff can be replaced. I typed a single line back. "You're too late. I already rebuilt it without you in it." I hit send, blocked the number, and turned the phone face down. Inside, I flicked on the kitchen light, opened the fridge, and pulled out everything I needed to make the first real meal I'd cooked in months. Steak, baked potato, something green so I could pretend to be an adult. The sizzle of meat in the pan sounded like victory. The smell filled the house the way laughter used to. Halfway through dinner, my phone lit up again, this time with Pete's name. "Thought you'd want to know," he said, glee barely contained. "Gregory's lawyers just requested an emergency settlement conference, offered to drop the civil suit entirely if you sign an NDA and pay his legal fees to date, 28 grand. I forked a piece of steak, chewed, considered. "Tell them no." "You sure? 28 is real money." "I'm sure," Pete laughed. "That's what I told them you'd say. They've got until Monday to withdraw the complaint or we file our counterclaims. Malicious prosecution, abuse of process, the works. Jennifer's recording, Elena's statement, Linda's filing, the board minutes. It's a buffet of pain." "Make it hurt." With pleasure. We hung up, and I finished my dinner standing at the counter like a man who finally owns his own kitchen again. Later, I carried a second beer out to the garage and stood in front of the '67 Mustang I'd been babying for the last 6 months. Candy apple red white racing stripe, waiting for one last coat of clear before delivery to a customer who'd lost his son to an IED in Ramadi. The car was going to a veterans charity auction. I ran my hand over the fender and felt the future under my palm, clean, smooth, unburdened. I flicked off the lights, locked up, and walked back into the house. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibility. Gregory could rage all he wanted. He could file lawsuits, send texts, hire private investigators, scream into whatever void was left of his life. It didn't matter. I'd already survived the earthquake. The aftershocks were just noise. I brushed my teeth, set the alarm, and slid between sheets that smelled only of laundry detergent and new beginnings. Somewhere across town, Gregory was probably pacing a hotel suite, drunk on scotch and self-pity, plotting moves on a chessboard that no longer existed. Let him. I closed my eyes and slept the whole night through for the first time in a year. When I woke up Friday morning, the sun was pouring through the bedroom window like it had been saving up light just for me. I made coffee strong enough to strip paint, took it out to the porch, and watched the neighborhood wake up. Kids on bikes, sprinklers hissing, a golden retriever chasing its tail in lazy circles. My phone stayed quiet. No threats, no lawyers, just birds and the smell of cut grass. I smiled into my coffee. Gregory's war was over. Mine had ended the moment I stopped letting him define the terms. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, the day stretching out in front of me felt wide open and entirely my own. Gregory's threats weren't empty, as I discovered Tuesday morning when I pulled into the lot and found 2 marked cruisers angled across my bays, like they were trying to keep the building itself from escaping. Detective Ray Morrison leaned against my office door, coffee in one hand, the other hooked in his duty belt, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Jack Turner? That's me. We need to talk about Gregory Dalton. He filed a formal complaint yesterday afternoon. Harassment, stalking, terroristic threats, the full buffet. I unlocked the roll-up door and waved him into the little glass box I call an office. The place smelled like motor oil and the ghost of yesterday's burnt popcorn. I dropped into my chair. Morrison stayed standing. According to Mr. Dalton, he read from a spiral notebook, you've been following him in a black pickup, contacting his business associates, and threatening to end him if he didn't stay away from your wife. I barked a laugh that came out harsher than I intended. Interesting timeline, considering his life ended itself the moment the board saw the video of him banging my wife on her desk. Morrison's mouth twitched, almost a smile, then flattened again. So, you admit to threatening him? I admit to telling him the truth has consequences. Turns out I was prophetic. He flipped a page. He says you told him, and I quote, I will burn your world down. I said his world was already on fire and he'd lit the match. There's a difference. Morrison studied me the way cops do when they're trying to decide if you're crazy or just exhausted. Jack, I've known you since you and Pete were stealing my mom's zucchini bread off the cooling rack. You're not the guy who makes criminal threats. No, I said, but I am the guy who's done letting predators rewrite the story so they stay on top. I pulled my phone, opened the voice memo app, and hit play. Gregory's voice filled the tiny office, Sunday night, crystal clear, every lie and every threat laid out like a confession in church. Elena's quiet, I won't lie for you, was the period at the end of the sentence. Morrison listened without expression, pen moving across his notebook in short, precise strokes. When it finished, he clicked the pen closed. This was recorded in your home, one-party consent state, but Dalton wasn't aware he was being recorded. He was in my house, uninvited, trying to suborn perjury from my wife. I'm pretty sure the law's on my side. Morrison exhaled through his nose. Here's the part where I'm supposed to stay neutral. Off the record, Dalton's sweating like a hooker in church. His lawyer's already shopping for a PR crisis firm. But on the record, he's a prominent citizen, and we have to investigate thoroughly. I'll need you to come in Thursday or Friday for a formal statement. Am I under arrest? Not today. He gave me a long look that was almost sympathetic. But Jack, watch your six. Guys like Dalton don't go quiet. They go nuclear. After Morrison left, I stood in the open bay doors and watched the cruisers pull away, feeling the cold November air knife straight through my coveralls. My phone buzzed before I could even made it back inside. Pete. Heard Ray paid you a visit, he said without preamble. Word travels fast in a small city. Gregory's in full panic mode. He's lawyered up with the most expensive shark tank in the state, Harrington Mills and Wade. They just filed a civil complaint. Defamation, tortious interference with business expectancy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, false light, the kitchen sink. They're asking for $5 million in damages and a gag order. I felt the floor tilt under me. $5 million? Punitive. Meant to scare you into settling. They know you don't have it, so the real goal is to bleed you dry defending it. 50 grand minimum in legal fees even if you win, probably closer to 100 and change. I leaned against the fender of a '67 Mustang I was supposed to finish this week and stared at nothing. 20 years of 5 a.m. Mornings, busted knuckles, eating ramen so I could make payroll during the recession. Gone in one vindictive stroke of a fountain pen. What are my options? I asked. Pete didn't sugarcoat it. Option 1. Fold. Apologize publicly, claim everything was a misunderstanding, pay him something, maybe low six figures, and he drops the suit. You keep the shop, but you'll be paying it off until you're 70. Not happening. Option 2. Fight. We file counterclaims. Abuse of process, malicious prosecution, maybe even extortion based on the recording. The recording is gold, but it'll take 2-3 years and every dime you have. You'll probably have to mortgage the business, maybe the house. I closed my eyes. Option 3? There is no 3 unless you've got a fairy godmother I don't know about. I thanked him and hung up. The rest of the morning I moved through the shop like a ghost. Customers came and went. I smiled and nodded and quoted prices and didn't hear a word I said. At lunch, I sat in the break room with a sandwich I didn't taste and stared at the civil complaint Pete had emailed over. The legalese swam. Irreparable harm, wanton and reckless disregard, prayer for relief in excess of $5 million. My phone rang again. Jennifer Walsh. I just saw the filing, she said. Jack, I'm so sorry. Not your fault. Actually, it is. If I'd spoken up 3 years ago, this never would have happened. Stop. You spoke up when it counted. That's what matters. She was quiet a moment. There's something else. Gregory cornered me in the parking garage last night. Told me if I didn't sign an affidavit saying I misremembered everything, he'd make sure I never worked in this state again. He was shaking. Smelled like a distillery. Did he threaten you physically? Not exactly, but he got in my space. I recorded it on my phone, same as you did. I felt the first spark of real hope all day. Send it to Pete. Now. Already did. Jack, and there's more. Linda served him yesterday. She's asking for everything. House, alimony, the yacht, the Aspen condo. She attached the board's termination letter as Exhibit A. He's completely boxed in. I exhaled a laugh that surprised both of us. So he's lashing out at the only target still in reach. Pretty much. Be careful. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. That afternoon, I closed the shop early, an almost unheard-of event, and drove to the river. Sat on the hood of my truck and watched barges push past under the bridge. The water was the color of gunmetal, moving slow and inevitable. I thought about my dad, who'd started this business with a toolbox and a dream, how he used to say, never let a bully set the terms of the fight. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. See you soon. No signature needed. I could hear Gregory's voice in every word. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then typed a single reply. Looking forward to it. I hit send before the rational part of my brain could stop me. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and made 2 lists. Column 1, things Gregory can still take from me, the business, the house, my savings, my reputation. Column 2, things he can't, my self-respect, the truth, the people who know what really happened. Column 2 was shorter, but it was enough. I called Pete back. Tell Harrington, Mills and Wade we're not settling. We're countersuing for malicious prosecution, abuse of process, and defamation. Attach Jennifer's recording, Elena's statement, and the board's termination letter. And tell them if Gregory wants to play scorched earth, we'll see him in discovery. Pete let out a low whistle. You sure? This is all in, Jack. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. There was a pause, and then Pete laughed. The deep, delighted laugh of a lawyer who's just been handed a flamethrower. Give me 24 hours. I'll have an answer to complaint drafted that'll make their associates cry into their caviar. I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Steady, focused anger. Not rage, resolve. Gregory wanted war, fine. But he was about to learn that some men don't scare, don't fold, and don't forgive. And when you come for a man's life, you'd better be ready to lose your own. Thursday night was coming. This time, I'd be ready. We wait and see what he does, and we prepare for war. That afternoon, Elena called with more bad news. Morrison and Associates terminated me, she said. Effective immediately. I'm sorry. Are you? Because this is what you wanted, isn't it? Gregory destroyed, me unemployed, our marriage over. What I wanted was a faithful wife and an honest marriage. Everything else is just consequences. Elena was quiet for a moment. Jack, there's something else. Gregory came to see me last night. I felt a chill run down my spine. What did he want? He wanted me to lie for him, to say that you threatened him, that you hired people to harass him, that you were stalking him. And? I told him to go to hell. I was surprised by the relief I felt when Elena said she wouldn't lie for Gregory. It wasn't triumph. It was the sudden absence of a weight I hadn't realized was crushing me. Thank you, I said, the words coming out rough. Don't thank me, Elena replied, voice low and tired. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I'm sick of being treated like a pretty stupid accessory. Gregory thinks every woman is either a conquest or a secretary. I'm done. What did he say when you told him no? That I'd regret it. That he'd make sure I never modeled again in this city. That he had friends who could make sure my reputation was radioactive. She gave a brittle laugh. He actually said radioactive, like he's a Bond villain. Empty threats from a man who just realized the floor dropped out from under him. Maybe, she said. But Jack, when he left Linda's house last night, he was drunk and screaming in the driveway, talking about how everyone had betrayed him, how we'd all pay. You, me, Jennifer Walsh, the board, even his own wife. He kept saying, they'll see, over and over. I've never seen him like that. He was unhinged. The word landed between us like a live grenade. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen a long time, staring at nothing. Then I called Mickey. Meet me at the shop, I told him. Bring coffee, strong. Mickey arrived 20 minutes later in his ancient Broncos jersey, carrying 2 large Dunkins and the expression of a man who already knew this was going to be a long night. I laid it all out. Gregory's visit to Elena, the threats, the meltdown in Linda's driveway. Mickey listened without interrupting, which for him is the equivalent of a normal person screaming. When I finished, he took a slow sip of coffee and said, Sounds like our boy Gregory is having what the professionals call a complete psychotic break. What do you want to do about it? He asked. I'd been thinking about almost nothing else since Elena's call. I want to talk to him, face to face. No lawyers, no cops, no audience. just him and me. Mickey stared at me like I'd suggested wrestling a grizzly. That is a spectacularly bad idea, Jack. Maybe, but I'm tired of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm tired of checking my rearview mirror. I want to look him in the eye and tell him it ends here. And if he's got a gun, or if he really has lost it, then I'll handle it. But I've spent a year letting this man control my life from a distance. I'm done. Mickey studied me for a long beat, then sighed. You always were a stubborn son of a bitch. Fine. But we do it smart. Public enough he won't pull anything stupid. Private enough he can't hide behind PR. I know a place. He told me about an old brick warehouse Mickey's dad used to own down by the rail yards. Half the units leased to small contractors, the rest empty since the recession. Security cameras at the entrances, floodlights, but the back loading bay was shielded from the street. You could talk without being overheard, but you couldn't disappear someone without half the city noticing. Mickey made the call from a burner while I listened on speaker. Gregory, it's Mickey Callahan. Jack Brennan wants to meet. Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Warehouse on Packer Avenue. Just the two of you. No lawyers, no cops, no phones. You want to tell him whatever you need to say to his face, or you can keep making threats like a little bitch and see how that works out for you. There was a long pause. I could hear Gregory breathing hard on the other end, like he'd sprinted to answer. Tell Brennan I'll be there, he said. His voice was thick, almost hoarse. Tell him I've got plenty to say. He'll be waiting, Mickey replied, and hung up. Wednesday crawled by like a hangover. I rebuilt a carburetor I could have done blindfolded, snapped at a customer who only wanted an oil change, and burned my hand on a radiator hose and barely felt it. Every hour I pictured Gregory pacing whatever mansion he was hiding in, rehearsing whatever speech he thought would save him. Jennifer Walsh called at 6:30, voice crackling with adrenaline. It's national now. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox ran a chyron. CEO fired after affair with model, wife, and alleged victim speak out. His lawyer's statement got laughed off the air. They used the phrase, credibility in tatters. How's he taking it? Poorly. Sources say he hasn't left the house since yesterday. Linda changed the locks. He's at the Four Seasons under an alias, room service only. Apparently he ordered 6 bottles of Macallan and tried to tip the kid with a Rolex. I laughed in spite of myself. He's melting down. Faster than an ice cube in July, she said. Jack, be careful tomorrow night. Men like Gregory don't accept defeat gracefully. They lash out. I know. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen with the lights off and a glass of bourbon I didn't drink. I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, quiet, conflict-averse, willing to swallow any amount of humiliation to keep the peace. The man who'd let Gregory smirk his way through barbecues while he destroyed my marriage from the inside. That man was gone. Thursday arrived cold and clear. The sky over the rail yards was the color of a fresh bruise by the time I pulled my truck into the gravel lot behind the warehouse. Mickey had already killed most of the floodlights. Only one sodium lamp buzzed overhead, throwing long shadows between the loading docks. The air smelled of creosote and river water. I was 10 minutes early. Mickey sat in his car across the street, engine idling, close enough to intervene, far enough to stay invisible. We'd agreed. If I wasn't out in 30 minutes, or if he heard anything that sounded like trouble, he was calling it in. At 8:59, a black Mercedes rolled in, tires crunching slow. Gregory stepped out wearing the same camel coat he'd worn the night he told me, "Boys will be boys," over steaks at the club. But the coat hung looser now, and his face looked like it had been carved from old candle wax. He saw me leaning against the corrugated door and stopped 10 feet away. "Just us?" he asked. His voice was raw, like he'd been shouting or crying, maybe both. "Just us." He looked around the empty lot, hands shoved deep in his pockets. For a second, I thought he might bolt. Then he squared his shoulders the way men do when they're trying to remember who they used to be. "You wanted to talk," he said. So talk. I didn't move. I'm done talking, Gregory. You've had a year of talking. Texts to my wife, lies to my face, speeches about how I was the problem for not being man enough to keep her happy. Tonight you listen. Something flickered across his face. Rage, shame, fear, all fighting for room. I built everything, he started. Everything. And you. You built it on other people's backs, I cut in. On interns who were afraid to say no. On a wife who looked the other way for the lifestyle. On a best friends you stabbed the second it was convenient. You didn't build anything, Gregory. You looted. His hands came out of his pockets. For one cold second I thought I saw the glint of metal, but it was just his watch catching the light. I loved her, he said suddenly, almost pleading. You never made her feel… Stop. The word cracked like a starter pistol. Don't you dare make this about love. You used her. You used Elena. You used Jennifer Walsh when she was 23 and terrified of losing her job. This isn't love. This is entitlement in a $5,000 suit. He flinched as if I'd hit him. I'm going to say this once, I continued, stepping closer. You are going to leave this city. You are going to sell the house, take whatever pennies the board lets you keep, and disappear. You will not contact Allison again. You will not contact Elena or Jennifer or Linda or me. You will not drive past my shop. You will not send flowers or drunk texts or hire some burnout to key my truck. Because if you do, if I even hear you took a breath in my direction, I will make sure the next story isn't about you involves handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. Do you understand? His mouth worked soundlessly. I asked if you understand. He nodded once, a small, defeated jerk. Good. I turned to walk away. That was when he lunged. I heard the scuff of his shoe on gravel a half-second before he hit me from behind, all 200 pounds of entitled desperation slamming into my back. We went down hard, my forehead scraping concrete. Something cold and sharp pressed under my jaw. A box cutter, I realized, the kind contractors use. You think you won? He hissed in my ear, breath sour with whiskey and terror. You think… The floodlights snapped on, blinding white. Mickey's voice rolled across the lot like thunder. Drop it, Gregory, or I drop you. Gregory froze. I felt the blade tremble against my skin. Mickey was 15 feet away, shotgun leveled, not pointed in the air, not pointed at the ground, pointed center mass. Calm as Sunday morning. Gregory's grip loosened. The box cutter clattered to the ground. I rolled free, came up breathing fire. Gregory stayed on his knees, staring at the weapon like it was the first real thing he'd seen in months. Mickey didn't lower the shotgun. You just assaulted a man on camera, genius. He nodded toward the corner of the building where a red light blinked steadily. That feed goes straight to my phone and to a cloud account. You're done. Gregory looked at me, eyes wild. You set me up. No, I said, wiping blood from my forehead. You set yourself up. The second you decided other people's lives were collateral damage in your midlife crisis. Sirens in the distance now. Someone must have seen the floodlight trigger. Mickey had planned for everything. Gregory started to cry. Not dignified tears, sobbing, snot-nosed, the sound of a man who finally understood the bill had come due. I stood over him. Go home, Gregory, or whatever's left of it, and stay gone. The first cruiser rolled in as I walked to my truck. I didn't look back. Later, sitting in the kitchen with an ice pack on my head and a fresh bourbon I actually drank this time, Mickey raised his glass. 2 endings, he said. I clinked mine against his. 2 beginnings. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the windows, carrying away the last of the leaves and whatever was left of the man I used to be. Thursday night came, and with it, the end of Gregory Dalton. And somewhere inside my chest, something that had been clenched for a year finally let go. Thursday night arrived with a cold rain that turned the old warehouse district into a maze of shadows and reflecting puddles. I arrived at the designated meeting spot, an empty parking lot between two abandoned buildings, 15 minutes early, just in case Gregory had any surprises planned. Mickey was already there, leaning against his pickup truck and smoking a cigarette. "You sure about this, Jack?" "As sure as I can be. I'll be right here if you need backup." "I know, but this is something I need to handle myself." At exactly 9 p.m., Gregory's black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. He got out slowly, looking around nervously before walking toward where I stood under the single working streetlight. Gregory looked like hell. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "Good." "Turner," he said, stopping about 10 feet away from me. "Gregory, you wanted to talk, so let's talk. You've destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure people knew about it." Gregory's hands were shaking, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. "I had everything. A successful career, a beautiful home, respect in the community. Now I have nothing. You had all of that because you were good at hiding what you really were. A predator who used his position to manipulate women." "That's not true. Jennifer Walsh, Sarah Chen, Rebecca Martinez, and my wife would disagree." Gregory took a step closer, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. "Elena came to me, Turner. She seduced me, not the other way around. Even if that were true, which it isn't, you were her boss. You had a responsibility to maintain professional boundaries." "Professional boundaries?" Gregory laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You think the business world operates on professional boundaries? You're even more naive than Elena said you were." "What did Elena say about me?" "That you were boring, predictable, a small man with small dreams who would never understand what she needed." Each word hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "And what did she need?" "Excitement, adventure, a man who could match her ambitions." "A man like you? A man exactly like me." I studied Gregory's face in the harsh streetlight. "So why didn't you leave your wife for her?" Gregory's composure cracked. "Because Catherine has money, connections, social standing. Elena was entertainment. Entertainment." "Don't look at me like that, Turner. You know what your wife was. Beautiful, ambitious, and willing to do anything to get ahead. She was perfect for what I needed." "Which was?" "A distraction. Something to make the long days at the office more interesting." I felt a rage building in my chest that I hadn't experienced since the day I found them together. "You destroyed my marriage for entertainment." "I didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken. Elena told me your marriage had been dead for years." Elena lied. About a lot of things, apparently. Gregory shrugged. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter now. What matters is that you've ruined everything I worked for, and I want you to pay for it." "How?" Gregory reached into his jacket, and for a moment, I thought he might be armed. Instead, he pulled out a thick envelope. $50,000, he said. "Cash. Take it and disappear." "Disappear where?" "I don't care. Another city, another state, just somewhere far away from here." I looked at the envelope, then back at Gregory. "You're trying to bribe me?" "I'm trying to solve a problem. You take the money, move away, and stop talking to reporters about my personal life." "And if I don't, then I'll make your life as miserable as you've made mine." I thought about the $50,000. It was more money than I'd ever seen at one time, enough to start over somewhere new, maybe buy a bigger shop in a different city. "What about Elena?" "What about her? Does she get $50,000 to disappear too?" Gregory's face hardened. "Elena made her choice. She can live with the consequences." "Just like Jennifer Walsh had to live with the consequences?" "Jennifer Walsh was a mistake. I learned from it." "Did you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just got better at covering your tracks." Gregory stepped closer, close enough that I could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes. Take the money, Turner. It's the best offer you're going to get. I looked at the envelope again, then at Gregory's desperate face, then at Mickey waiting by his truck in case this conversation went sideways. You know what, Gregory? You're right about one thing. Elena and I did have problems in our marriage. We'd grown apart, stopped communicating, stopped making each other a priority. Gregory smiled, thinking he'd won. So, you understand. But those problems didn't give you the right to destroy what we had. They didn't give you the right to manipulate my wife or abuse your position of power. Gregory's smile faded. Turner. And they sure as hell don't give you the right to think you can buy your way out of the consequences. I took the envelope from Gregory's hands, opened it, and let the wind scatter $50,000 in cash across the empty parking lot. You're insane, Gregory whispered, watching the bills blow away in the rain. Maybe, but I'm not for sale. Gregory lunged at me, but 20 years of physical labor had kept me in better shape than his gym membership had kept him. I sidestepped his attack, grabbed his arm, and used his own momentum to send him sprawling into a puddle. Stay down, Gregory. He struggled to his feet, his expensive suit now soaked and muddy. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're finished in this city. Your career is over, your marriage is over, and your reputation is destroyed. There's nothing left for you here. I'll sue you for everything you have. With what money? You just threw $50,000 away trying to bribe me, and your wife's lawyers are going to take everything else in the divorce. Gregory wiped mud from his face, his eyes wild with rage and desperation. I'll kill you. No, you won't. Because you're not a killer, Gregory. You're just a bully who's finally met someone who won't be bullied. I turned and walked toward Mickey's truck, leaving Gregory standing alone in the rain-soaked parking lot. Behind me, I could hear him shouting threats, but they sounded hollow now, like the desperate cries of a man who'd finally run out of options. How'd it go? Mickey asked as I got in the passenger seat. It's over. You sure about that? I looked back at Gregory, who was on his hands and knees trying to collect the scattered money from the puddles. Yeah, I'm sure. As we drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace, not happiness, not satisfaction, not even relief. Just peace. Gregory Dalton had taken my wife, destroyed my marriage, and tried to ruin my life. But he hadn't broken me. If anything, he'd made me stronger. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding. Not my marriage, that was beyond repair, but my life, my business, my future. And Gregory? Gregory would spend the rest of his life learning what it meant to face consequences for his actions. Justice, it turned out, was better than revenge after all.